Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Monday night's edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. Unfortunately, Charles is out tonight. He'll be back with us on next week, and but we have a great show lined up for you tonight. We're going to be talking with the candidate for the clerk of the Cook County Circuit Court, Mariyana Spryopoulos is going to be with us, and then we'll also be talking with the chief of police out in Flossmoor a little bit later on in the broadcast. We've got some disturbance, so I'm going to just ask you all to hold on for 1 second. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a disturbance there. So we're going to be talking with Mariyana Spryopoulos in just a couple of minutes, and then Monroe Anderson is going to be joining us, filling in for Charles Thomas tonight. And of course, this is a very important time because it's election time, and there are some key races, although we focus a lot of attention on the national races with the presidential race, which is extraordinarily important in November. But there are key races locally that we have to focus on because your politics impacts your lives mostly from the local level. So it's very important that you understand the offices and the candidates who are running for those offices, because those will be the people who will be making decisions that will be mostly impactful to our lives. And we are glad to have with us, joining us for this first half hour of the program, is candidate Mariyana Spryopoulos. Welcome to the program. And I'm going to also bring in Monroe Anderson, who has just joined us. He's going to be my co-host for the evening. And I want to welcome you both to the program. Monroe, good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
All right. Great.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. So Mariyana Spryopoulos, I've been seeing a lot of your ads out there, and you are running for the clerk of the circuit court. We'll get into a little of your background a little bit later on, but let's hear from you. Tell our viewers, give us our viewers a little bit about you, what you've been doing, and what you're looking to do as the new clerk of the circuit court.
Okay, well, there's a lot in that question. A little bit about me. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I'm a daughter of immigrants, and my dad started a small business near 79th and Western. And I worked in the small business, and I learned hard work and sacrifice. And my parents stressed education, so I got a law degree and an MBA from local schools. I went to the John Marshall Law School, which is now UIC Law, and then I got my MBA from Loyola. I first started my my law career as an assistant state's attorney at the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, and then opened my own practice for a few years doing contract work. Then I ran for office. So I'm currently a commissioner at the Water Reclamation District. I was elected in 2010, 16, and 22. And during my time there, I've been the president for 2 terms and chairman of finance. It's $1 billion agency with 2,000 employees. So I'm in a unique position to run for this office in that I have a legal background as well as experience running a countywide agency. So I'm bringing those two together to run for the clerk of the circuit court's office.
Why do you want the job?
Well, there's a lot of challenges going on right now. And since I understand how the court system should operate, I can see where I can bring value to this and make sure that it's working for everybody. So, for example, we had in May of last year, WBEZ covered a story where if individuals go through the restorative justice program and they're successful, they should have the low-level felonies removed from their record. And the clerk's office was not doing that. In fact, people were losing their jobs because the felonies were still on their record. So that's not how you should be operating the office. But
How was that happening?
when the when the public
that was happening?
when the public defender realized that many of their clients had the felonies still on their record, they pointed out the problem to the clerk's office. And the clerk didn't take responsibility for that. They pointed their finger to Tim Evans, the chief judge, and said it's their responsibility, when in fact it's the clerk's responsibility to be doing that. And so, it's one thing if there's errors, but when the errors are pointed out, if you're running for leadership, you take responsibility for that and you come up with solutions and how to correct those problems. So I think that there's, a couple of problems there. Most recently, the clerk was trying to put criminal cases online, and the identities of 5,000 juveniles were exposed to the public, which is against state law. And, that's something that could easily have been prevented had the clerk looked at what the law was and what she was allowed to do and not to do. So we can't afford these kind of mistakes. Because another thing is if you're an individual who can't afford an attorney and has to look at the website to find out when your next court date is, the website goes down for 2 weeks. You can't find out when your next court date is. So those people.
Okay, I'm curious. Do you think this is incompetence or indifference or what? I mean, because there's no excuse for this if this is happening the way you're saying it's happening.
These stories have been reported in the news. This is not something that I've just heard from somebody at the office. WBEZ did the story on the felonies, the low-level felonies. And CBS did a recent story of an individual who had a felony on his record, as well as I indicated CBS and the Daily Line did it as well.
Yeah.
So you can look up these stories and do, look at the full report on it. But I think it's a combination of incompetence, mismanagement, and indifference. You need someone who understands, how it impacts people in a real way.
Yeah.
Because if you're consistently doing these kind of things and having it affect people, then I think that's a major problem.
Let me ask you a question. What is the budget of the clerk's office?
It's $130 million.
And how many employees? How many employees are under the clerks?
1,400 employees.
So this problem that you're talking about, how many felonies were supposed to be removed that were not removed under this administration, under the current administration?
There were several for this specific incidents. There were several hundred.
So these were people who successfully completed whatever their alternative sentencings were.
That's correct.
As a result of doing that, they were supposed to, their felonies were supposed to be removed from their records.
Correct.
Or removed from the clerk's office.
Their felonies were supposed to be removed from their record. So they committed a crime, but they were offered to go through the restorative justice program. And when they satisfied the requirements of the restorative justice program, they should have had the felonies removed from their record. And
they weren't removed. What was the clerk's reasoning for that not happening? Because we know that typically, I'm sure that the majority of those people whose records were not removed were Black or Hispanic. So I'm sure this it impacted Black community.
Absolutely.
The majority of those.
Yes. And so the office just doesn't know what they're doing. That's the bottom line.
But surely they've been asked about this, and surely you're telling people this is happening. So what's their explanation as to how this is going down?
That they made some mistakes. But my point to you is, okay, if you're going to accept that maybe one or two mistakes, but not hundreds of mistakes.
Right.
And then when the mistake is pointed out to you, you as a leader should sit down with the stakeholders and come up with a solution as to why this is happening. And as I indicated to you before, she didn't take responsibility. She pointed her finger to the chief judge and said it's their responsibility to take the felonies off the record when that's not true.
So what you're saying is that she's pointing the finger at somebody else or the chief judge, but it is the responsibility and the duty of the clerk of the circuit court to administer this and to make sure that it happens.
That's correct.
What is the process of getting that information to the clerk?
In terms of what?
Getting the information to the clerk to have the felonies removed. Somebody
So
has
when
to provide you with that information.
So there's orders that will be entered in court, and the judge will offer, if the individual wants to go through the restorative justice program, that will be noted on a court order, and they will be flagged by the clerk's office so that once they get notification that the individual has gone through the restorative justice program and satisfied those requirements, then the felony should be removed.
Who do they get that information from?
That the individuals have successfully satisfied the restorative justice program requirements.
Correct. They'll
be getting that from the probation department.
So the information is automatically transferred. So there's not mistakes can happen, but once they complete it, that person, the individual, goes to their parole office. They turn whatever information in saying that they're completed, or certificate of completion, or whatever that document is, to their parole officer or probation officer. The probation officer then records that information with the clerk's office.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay. So I guess we have to make sure that that process is working properly. But whatever the case may be, if it's the full responsibility of the clerk's office once they get it to make sure that it happens, and you're saying that several hundred of these individuals didn't get their records cleared, there's a serious problem. There's a serious problems in the clerk's office. I work, unfortunately, I've had a number of situations that I can see where the clerk's office is not being administered properly. It's a huge office, I'm sure, but I think that administratively, I get very frustrated with that process down there at the clerk's office, and hopefully you can improve those processes when you get down to that office. Let me ask you about, do you impact the cost of filing for cases at the clerk's office, like administrative hearing cases?
Well, a lot of those fees are set by the AOIC, the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts, and the state legislature. Sorry about that. And but I can certainly advocate for the reduction of those fees and try to streamline those. Sorry about the phone.
Well, certainly one of the things that I would certainly look for is that we have the case in administrative hearings. If a person gets a $35 ticket or a $100 ticket, and they go to the administrative hearing, the administrative law judge finds them liable and they want to contest it, they have to pay now $401.65 to have an administrative review, which to me is unconscionable. I'm not saying that that's the responsibility of the clerk, but if the clerk certainly has, I would think, some influence on advocating for those filing fees to be fair, that seems to be unconscionable to me.
Yes, certainly. One of the things on our, we have a reform plan. We call it the Spryopoulos plan. And one of them is to streamline costs and fees, because sometimes they can be, something that people can't handle. And some of those people are the people that need to have this system the most. So the cost should be in line with what they can handle.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be prohibitive. I mean,
Correct.
It's almost impacts due process. And so people should have access to defend themselves in our court system without it being prohibitive. And certainly cost should not be one of those areas that prohibits people who cannot afford lawyers and they can't afford lawyers, nor will they be able to afford the filing fees in order to have their day in court. So
Right.
If you can certainly take a look at that, we certainly would appreciate that. What are some of the other areas that you see that you can improve at the clerk's office?
Well, there's a lot of different areas that need help. But what I'd like to do is there's millions of dollars of fines and fees that go through this office in terms of municipalities sending in that money, and they get a percentage back. And we need to have an audit of that. My understanding is that the current the person who's in charge of that in the office is a relative, the current clerk, and used to be a bank analyst. I think that you should have someone who has comptroller experience and accounting experience to be able to reconcile that money. So that's one of the things I'd want to do. I'd want to also, the court system is not subject to FOIA. And so when individuals or reporters want to get information from the clerk's office, they say that they're not subject to FOIA because the court system's not subject to FOIA. But I would argue that I think some of the costs and administration of the clerk's office could be something that people could obtain. I mean, it is tax dollars, so we should know how that's being used. So I would go down to Springfield to advocate for stronger laws that could apply to the clerk's office in terms of, personnel, how money is being used in the office, what kind of resources are being used in which courthouse. Like, that's not something that, if we're concerned, which we obviously are concerned about security of information that's in files and people's identities, we certainly want to protect that, of course. But in terms of the mechanics of the office, in terms of volume, what kind of cases, where those cases are being filed, that's something that we should be able to collect information on and make it available to the public. It could be useful for academia. It could be useful for journalists and for the general public that's interested in that kind of thing. Something that the current office could do is the Chicago Tribune did an article last year regarding the length of continuances in felony cases. And apparently in Cook County, we have one of the longest periods of time for a continuance in a felony case. The clerk's office could, in each of those courtrooms, keep data in terms of why we have a continuance going on. Now, of course, you're going to have a continuance in certain cases. Maybe someone wants to get a new attorney. Someone wants to get an attorney. Maybe they're waiting for a witness, et cetera. But some of, having the longest period of time of continuances in Cook County seems a little burdensome for the people that are going through this system. So, for example, New York and LA, who have higher volume of cases, have a shorter period of continuances. So as clerk, could we look at the system in terms of all the courthouses, collect that information in each of the courtrooms by the clerk who's going to be in that courtroom, and sit down with the chief judge and say, this is the information that we've collected. We see a bottleneck in this courthouse. Maybe these are things that could be remedied. Maybe resources could be put in there, and just try to help move the process along. I think that that's something that we could do.
Yeah, but aren't those continuances ruled on by the court, by the judge?
Right. So that's what I was mentioning. So you are going to have continuances. I'm not saying that continuances are going to be eliminated. What I am saying is maybe there are unnecessary continuances or maybe something is going on in a certain courthouse where we, as the clerk's office, could look at what is going on, sort of creating a bottleneck in terms of cases, and facilitate some kind of movement of those cases in certain courthouses. So that's something that the clerk's office could do. Another thing is having an independent inspector general. So I introduced an inspector general at the Water Reclamation District, which is another set of eyes looking at what we're doing, looking at efficiencies. I think you need to have an independent inspector general at the clerk's office. The current administration thinks that they have an independent inspector general. However, that person reports to the clerk. I think you need to have it be a separate entity or another government entity that's doing that. So for a couple of reasons. You want your employees to feel comfortable that they have an environment where there's not going to be retaliation against them if they report something, a concern or an issue that they're facing, that they can, obviously they're going to talk to their manager and try to work it out that way. But if it's something that they feel very uncomfortable with, they can go to the inspector general and report that wrongdoing so that it can be investigated to see if there's, something there. And so that's something that I would want to do too. So, the employees feel like they're working in a retaliatory free environment. I want to go in and I mentioned to you the audit, the independent inspector general, having FOIA being more available. I also want to go in and have a strategic plan in terms of setting goals for the office. Where do we want to be 3, 6 months, a year from now? What kind of movement do we want to create in terms of files? And going and talking to all the employees. I've heard from many employees at various courthouses saying that they haven't ever met the current clerk. I think those are the people on the ground who understand their jobs best. And oftentimes they have some of the best ideas as well in terms of how to facilitate the work that they're doing on an everyday basis. So my first, 6 months probably will be taken up going from courthouse to courthouse and talking to the people who are doing the day-to-day work in the courthouses.
Well, I think one of the other areas is at the process, because most people are going to deal with those who are processing their filings, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's who you deal with a great deal before you even get to the courthouse. You have to deal with clerks in terms of filing and figuring out how to file or how to complete documentation. It is, it's gotten better in some areas. In some areas, it's still archaic in terms of that process. So hopefully, you will spend time looking at that process, because it's daunting for the average person who
Absolutely
comes down to the clerk's office and, they've been served with some sort of summons and they don't have the money to pay an attorney to do it. So they have to go do it. So it's very daunting and intimidating for the average person to come down there to go through that situation. So hopefully you can streamline that process, which also helps the people who are working there. Most of the people that I encounter at the clerk's office are very decent people, and they try to help. But there's some systemic problems there, and that are pretty archaic. And I've been going down there for 38 years now, and there's still some things that seems like I'm dealing with the Stone Ages. So hopefully that you could do that. Now, let me just get to this other part for employees, because in Chicago, unfortunately, it has a real flag for pay to play. Mm-hmm. So employees have to buy a certain number of tickets to support their current employer or a person who's holding that office. In this particular, we're talking about the clerk. What will you do that you can ensure to the public and to the staff that they're not required to buy tickets to keep their jobs?
Well, I have said on the campaign trail in other interviews as well, and I'm happy to say it right here, that I will not be accepting donations from employees in my office. They would not be required to buy tickets for anything in order to keep their job. I think that, it puts a lot of pressure on employees. And you need to have a bright line between government and politics. And so I certainly will not be doing that. So you can hold me to that, Mark and Monroe.
All right,
Okay.
good. Well, I don't. One more question.
And I have one too.
I don't particularly like to talk about the opponent. I really like to hear from and spend time talking with the candidate. But the reason I asked that question is because it reared its head again in an article that came out that there was, some $45,000 that alleged that employees had to contribute to the current clerk's campaign, campaign fund. And the fact that an employee would have to pay anything towards somebody's campaign, it's hard enough for people to, manage their daily lives and the expenses of taking care of themselves, their families, and all the other things that they have to deal with. But for somebody to earn $60,000, $70,000 a year, and $10,000 of that has to go towards buying tickets to fundraisers, again, is just absolutely abusive, ridiculous, and unconscionable. And we would certainly hope that you would put something in place that will assure the public that employees are not working under those types of conditions.
Well, certainly, as I mentioned before, I'm going to have a strategic plan, and as part of that strategic plan, we're going to have ethics training on a regular basis and sort of set an ethical code so that employees are clear on that. And I mentioned before how I would go around and meet the various employees where they're working, and I want to hear back from them. I think that that's a way for employees to feel like they're part of the process, the change that we want to bring about. I did want to add one other note in that we want to bring the court system to communities by working with community groups and pro bono legal clinics to try to have pop-up legal clinics in various communities, maybe once a month, to help people file their documentation and bring the expungement summit back. You may recall this is something that Dorothy Brown, previous administration, had on a regular basis, and people really responded to that. And I have heard that people would like that to return. So that's something that I want to bring back on a regular basis so that people can count on that. Mark, you brought up something that, going to court in itself is a very intimidating and nerve-wracking process. You're usually not going for a great reason in one way or another. So to try to have that assistance and the professionalism of the staff goes a long way to help people navigate what can be a very scary, process for them.
Monroe, you had a question.
Yeah. What about the great Chicago tradition of taking care of friends and family first?
Well, the current administration seems to be doing that.
Right, I know. So what plans do you have? Do you plan to change that practice? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that we advertise in various employment, sites to try to get resumes and see, what kind of response we're getting, and put it out to, various recruiters and see, we're looking for certain, people with certain backgrounds. Like I mentioned, the financial aspect of someone who has an accounting and comptroller background. Interview people and see, if they, want to work, and if they meet the requirements for the job, just like any other organization. Yeah.
Is the pay good enough where you can get experienced and talented people, or do you have to get your cousin Vinny because it doesn't pay that well?
I don't have a cousin Vinny, but we want to go. Our intent is to do the right thing here and we would try to recruit, for jobs in the best way that we can. And not everybody is, some people do want to serve. It's not all about the money.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be working in government.
Yeah, but how many employees are there that are
1,400.
would be under your direction?
1,400.
1,400. It's a lot of
Mhm.
jobs. And so we're a very political town. And most of our audience, or all of our audience, is from the Black community. And so I'm asking these questions because, it's going to be largely the people who are watching this are going to be making a decision from the Black community. So what would be your hiring practices in terms of equity within the clerk's office?
So we certainly want to have the employment, the makeup of the employees be reflective of the people that we are serving. And so, maybe even going to certain colleges to get that kind of representation, and make sure that we have, Hispanic representation, African-American representation, Arab, Asian, there's a whole spectrum of people and talent that we can choose from.
All right. We're talking with Mariyana Spryopoulos, who is running as a candidate for the clerk of the circuit court. I should certainly put on record, I did not vote for the current clerk. And so I think that, we do need to make a change there. I was trying to get to your press conference today, but I didn't get the information, and it's no fault of anybody else's, but my schedule was a little off. But I wanted to get to the press conference so that I could meet you in person, but I'm sure I'll get a chance to do that at some point. What else can you tell us, and you could tell our audience about what you plan to do as clerk, should you become the clerk for the circuit court?
So, we've been working really hard to get this message out throughout the county. This is not about, trying to keep my friends and family in jobs. This is about bringing change to this office that I have dealt with as an attorney. It's about what I mentioned earlier with regards to an independent inspector general. Ethics and transparency is important. Showing people what we're doing, whether that's through FOIA, loosening the FOIA on this office, issuing reports in terms of what we're doing, what our goal is, and where we are. Creating a dashboard on the website could be a way for people to check in on us. We just, we want to open it up in ways that we can, with obviously keeping the security of the files, and what we need to. The identities of people, keep that as secure as possible while opening up the process to people. We also want to make the technology work. Like I mentioned before, if you're a pro bono, someone who doesn't have an attorney, and you need to access your when your next court date is, and the website is down, you have to run over to a courthouse. People have to take the day off of work or find childcare, and that can be very difficult for everyday people. So having an app where you can find out your next court date on your phone. We all live through our phones these days. So we're in the 21st century. Mark, you brought up some of it is an archaic process. They're still using carbon paper in some courtrooms.
Yes.
So whoever that one sole provider of carbon paper in the world loves us here, but we need to turn the page on that and make it more accessible for people. And then finally, as I indicated, bringing the courts to the communities to be able to work with faith leaders, community leaders, and help people facilitate that process so that they don't have to go to a courthouse. Maybe they can go to their public library, which is oftentimes a lot closer. It's in communities. People could sometimes walk to the local library. And that might be something where we could work with libraries to make things more accessible to people as well. So there's lots of ideas, lots of things that we can do, but we can't implement any of this change until we get past March 19th.
All right. You, and one last thing. First of all, you have been endorsed by the Teamsters Local 700, which a lot of those members work for the clerk's office.
Three-quarters of the employees.
And you've also been endorsed by the Chicago Teachers Union.
Yes.
So you have quite a few endorsements. I can't read them all, but there's a few. And
over 150.
Right. Yep. But the most important endorsement of the people going to the ballot box.
Yes.
Now, there was a question somebody was asking, who would you be replacing? And the current clerk of the circuit court is Iris Martinez. And I should, for full disclosure, let the audience know that I did reach out to Iris Martinez's office. And I did speak with somebody on 2 separate occasions, and they were supposed to get back to us, and we invited them to come on, but we have not heard back from them. I don't believe in chasing anybody who is running for a public office who wants the public to support them. I will reach out and make an effort to invite you, but I don't believe in chasing anybody. The only person that I'm going to chase is my wife. But outside of that, I'm not chasing anybody. But with that, now contracts. I want to speak to contracts. You, as the clerk, would be over administering service contracts, right, to vendors. What is that budget? What is the budget, the amount of money that is let to contracts from the clerk's office? Or do you know what that number is?
So I only know that the total budget is 130 million, and I know much of that is personnel, payroll. I don't know the specific number on the contracts, but I'd be happy to, when I win, I'll come back on the show and I'll give you all the details.
Okay, great. And I hope that you would come back when you win and give us some updates, throughout the tenure of your time in office.
Like the transition?
Well, not even the transition. We'll let you get settled in, but we certainly want you to come back during your term to talk about some of the things that you were doing to improve the office. Now, the reason I ask you about contracts, now, who's responsible for getting the ballot boxes to the different precincts for voting? Does that come out of your office?
No. That's Karen Yarbrough. She's the clerk, the county clerk.
Okay.
So this is the clerk of the circuit court.
Right.
So this is specifically just courts, and Karen deals with voting.
Okay.
And the city board of elections. Sorry, city board of elections, and Karen does a lot of the suburb stuff.
Okay. All right. So when you get in office, we want to know more about the contracts that are let out of the office and how those are being equitably distributed.
Okay.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you. Monroe, do you have any other questions for Mariyana?
No, at least she sounds like she has a plan, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I think we do need a clerk. Like I said, I have never supported the current clerk, and I wasn't happy that they actually went to the office. Now I have to ask you a question that's probably not even relative to your office, but I want to know anyway. What's your opinion on red light cameras and speed cameras?
Oh, well, I've been, I've gotten some tickets. I don't know. It's a good question. it's difficult for, let's look back before we got those red light cameras, and how the police officers would try to stop people and what wouldn't get everybody, but now the red light camera is stopping or getting your license plate with that camera, which much to my chagrin, like I said, I've gotten some tickets. I don't know, but there's been so much controversy around it as well. So, the way that they sort of push the program on people and the payouts and stuff like that. So I don't know.
All right. Well, fair enough. It's one of those issues that is near and dear to me.
Why is that?
Well, because I think that it is a totally unjust policy. It is proven to be, certainly we know that it's proven to be very corrupt, and that we have not, it does not provide the kinds of safety benefits. In fact, it has increased more problematically. I mean, it's been scientifically studied here. Chicago certainly has been the poster city for having the largest number of red light. In fact, we got red light cameras, and we became the largest number of red light cameras because of corruption. There was a guy by the name of John Beal who received $1,500 for every camera that he got placed in the city of Chicago, and we ended up with 384 of them as a result of that, and of course the speed cameras. So it doesn't produce the kinds of safety, and it impacts the poorest communities the hardest, and it enriches some private company, and we're not getting the kinds of public benefits from that as a result of that system. So
it's a money generator for sure.
It certainly is a money generator. We don't even know how much money we actually get in our government, because so much of it is paid out,
Right.
and there is no accountability, line item accountability for it. So we really don't know about that. So, but I won't hold you. I won't hold you to that. But I'm going to ask everybody that because I want for everybody to be against them, and so because it just doesn't work for us. And we should be doing things that actually work for the benefit of our entire population.
Okay.
Mariyana, thank you very much for coming on. We'll let you have the last word. Is there any last words that you would like to share with us?
Just make sure that you go to vote, everyone. Voting is very important. It's your voice. It's the checks and balances for what is going on in government. People have fought and died to have the right to vote. So please don't take it for granted. Obviously I'd love you to vote for me. My punch number is 92. But please just go and, share your, go and vote, and tell your families to go and vote as well.
All right, Mariyana Spryopoulos, thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming on. We certainly appreciate you coming on. And, actually it was almost a last minute thing, but you worked it out and you came to talk to our public, and I certainly want them to keep that in mind, and certainly go to your website. What's your website?
citizensformariyana.com. All right. One word.
I'm glad it wasn't your full name. It's hard enough to get it right. Not so hard, but
No, but you said it right. Spryopoulos rhymes with metropolis.
Yeah, I practiced a whole lot. All right, Mariyana Spryopoulos, who is running for the clerk for the Circuit Court of Cook County. You all keep her in mind and give her a good look. Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, and have a good evening.
Yeah, you too.
Take care. All right. All right, Monroe, what do you think?
She sounds good, and I know there's been problems in the clerk's office. It's lots of problems, and it needs to be straightened out.
Yeah, it's one of those offices that I guess a lot of people hadn't paid any attention to it.
Right, it's under the radar.
Yeah, it's one of those obscure offices that's under the radar, and I think that we're starting to pay more attention to it. But there's a lot of money that comes through that office, and there are a few companies that are doing quite well from that, and certainly there's a lot of jobs there. 1,400, that's a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
That is under that control. But it certainly is a system that, I'm in the real estate business, so I have to deal with the clerk's office, frequently on different filings and that sort of thing. And you buy property, you got to go down to the clerk's office, and or you have an eviction, you got to go down to the clerk's office, you got to file there. So there are a number of things that people have to deal with at that office, and it certainly needs to. I'm aghast that with all of the money that office is not more fluid in terms of its process. I'm just, that
Well,
is somewhat amazing to me.
The way things have worked in the past in Chicago many times is that it's the fluidity comes from the grease. Certain people's palms being greased and money
Right.
flowing into their hands and pockets.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily impact the people who need the services.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be a whole, a lot of that going on in politics, in our public commons, which is why I think that privatization is not, a very good thing. I think that privatization has caused more of inefficiency and corruption in our public commons. I mean,
Right.
if you look at everywhere, in my opinion, I don't see where privatization has brought about efficiency anywhere in government.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there are people on the right, the Republicans, they want to privatize everything, right?
Right.
But they want to privatize just so they can steal money.
And hire their buddies. This is all. What's that great Chicago saying? Don't send me nobody that nobody don't know.
Right. Is that still going on?
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Well, you have to think about it this way. They're still using carbon paper in this day and age. So,
yeah.
And the advantage of using carbon paper versus the computers is harder to trace stuff.
It's harder to trace. Yeah. Well, I think that first of all, we should not be using carbon. I mean, we've still, we've got NCR paper these days. And sometimes when you're in court, there's orders that have to be drafted right at that, on the spot.
Yeah.
But I think that, and I've contended that you have court reporters who are in courts, right? We don't have enough of them. But I believe that there should always be somebody who has the skill of a court reporter that could spit documents out and put that information in, just as a court reporter can record everybody's conversation, which has always been an amazing talent to me, that they can record everything that is happening within, whether it's coming from either side of the counsel or the judge or the litigants. So there should be that type of person there that could dictate orders, and you can spit out an order right away, as opposed to all this carbon paper and duplicates or handwritten orders that nobody can understand what is actually on the order. So hopefully she will be real progressive and her plan, if she is elected, and I certainly think she's got a really good chance of being elected, and doing that in that office, make it a much easier process for people. I mean, I've gotten used to it because I've been going for years, so it really, doesn't bother me a whole lot. But when I go in there, sometimes I feel like time has stopped in
Right.
some parts of the clerk's
Well,
office.
the carbon paper tells you they're trying to bring the 70s back.
Yeah. Well, look, let's talk about. We're going to switch to a little national politics. We may be shifting a little bit because there is something happening out in Flossmoor, which they have hired their first Black chief of police less than a year ago, and they're trying to push him out the door. And there's no real good reason for doing that. And so
Well,
there's a big meeting going on tonight about that.
Yeah. And how large is their police force?
Their police force is 24 people on the police.
Okay,
On the
and
police force.
they brought him into town from someplace else. And
Yeah,
so
well,
there
he's
24 people on the force who had
yes.
visions of being in charge of it themselves, not having some guy from Southern Illinois, right?
Well, they actually did a nationwide search. They had a nationwide search, and there were 18 applicants,
Yeah.
and he ended up being the one that was selected.
Who's doing the choosing?
The village manager and the mayor. They work at the privilege of the mayor
Okay,
of the
so
city.
yeah, and so now, why are they now not happy with their choice? Because what he's being accused of is pretty minor.
Yeah, well, when we were asking the same questions,
Yeah,
of course, I always ask the questions. Okay, did he steal any money?
right.
Was there any sexual misconduct or sexual allegations? No. Did he abuse time and by not showing up to work? No. Was there an increase in crime and it was not addressed? No. Is morale down on the police department? No. So all of these areas that you would think that would be at least one of those, none of those exist. And he's never been disciplined. There's no disciplinary actions ever been brought. He's never been brought in for, discipline.
Well,
They
what I'm getting at is you're asking, those are good questions you're asking, but you're omitting a few, like, well, who is his cousin, and and who thinks they should get the job because it pays better.
Well, who is, when you say whose cousin, who is the chief's cousin?
Right.
Okay. Well, he doesn't have any relatives in the
I'm not talking about the new chief. I'm talking about the 24. I'm still back there at the 24.
Well, but the 24, the rank and file,
Yeah,
are all supportive of him. They think what's happening to him is wrong. They all support the
okay. Well,
chief.
who is upset about this?
Well, what we are discovering is, outside of the village manager who is running it like a dictatorship,
Okay.
the mayor, according to what we are learning, is new and doesn't really know much about government. She's never really had a job outside of being a mother and wife, which is a huge job, right?
Yeah.
And I sort of think that that should have attributed to you being able to transition in, because as a mother, you have to, you have to do a lot of politicking in the house with children and making sure everything comes together. So I don't minimize that task at all, and I don't envy anybody who is who has that task, because I take my hat off to them. But in terms of this village manager has been there 19 years, and she runs it like it's a dictatorship. The trustees have very little power or very little say. In fact, they have no say when it comes to personnel. And the chief, again, works at the will or the pleasure of the mayor, right? So I understand that there is a fire chief who wanted the job of the public safety director, which would be, they would have the full control of the police and the fire department. So that could be an angle. And I understand the chief was not in support of that. And so he has the fire chief as one of his enemies. So that could be playing a part. Now, what they're using as an excuse was they had this festival that there was some teen takeover at this festival. And so now they've canceled the festival. Now, mind you, the festival did not make any money. It was a loser for the village. But there were several other villages that are now not doing their festivals because of some of the rowdiness that was going on, and that the public safety risk, they decided not to do it. So Flossmoor is not like, standing by itself and doing that. But there was also other resources that he asked for that were denied for managing the festival, and they rejected those recommendations from him. And the other thing is that they want him to not be as vocal as he is about making recommendations, and maybe largely because he's the first person who has dark skin color in 100 years to be the chief of police. Mind you, that 65% of the population of Flossmoor is black.
Yeah, but there's a tradition now.
Yeah.
They have a 100-year tradition that they want to uphold.
Right. Well, the mayor is white, the village manager is white, the assistant village manager is white.
Right.
There are 3 black trustees and 3 white trustees, and most of the people, I understand, the community is really upset about this. So there's a town hall meeting that's going on right now, or a council meeting that is going on right now, and supposedly the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement officers are all converging down there, and I hope that they're running over City Hall and making a large presence down there, and showing that just because you're in a suburb, that you're not going to fly under the radar. And I think that that's what they were not thinking that was going to happen, and so they're trying to accuse him of instigating all of this. And I said, so what?
Little did they know, but the people show coming to the rescue.
Yes, the people show. And so I said to the trustees there, I said, look, you're 65% black. Why is all the administration white? This sounds like South Africa and apartheid. So I said that you all need to get together and get a consensus together, because I think this is the perfect opportunity for you all to bring a a black candidate to run for mayor. Certainly, the administration should not be all white, and you got 65% of the population there paying really high taxes to live there, and the entire administration. There's like 3 people who are making all the decisions for the entire village. I mean, the population there, I think, is like 10,000 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So that's that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Most all operations like that.
Yeah.
It's more or less like a family business.
Right. So I hope we'll see how that happens. So anyway, we're supposed to have the chief from Hazel Crest that's supposed to come on with us if they get out of that council meeting before we get off the air, as well as the president from the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers to give us an update as to what took place and what happened tonight.
What time does the meeting start?
The meeting started at 7:30. The meeting.
Yeah, no, it's I don't. If it's as hot and bothered as you say it is,
yeah,
you'll be calling it a night.
Yeah.
Tucking your covers in, and they'll still be down there fighting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So in the meantime, let's talk about our favorite subject, Trump. So the Supreme Court came out with its ruling today,
right?
Which is what I suspected was going to happen, although there were some differences of opinions.
Yeah, right. I know, because you had some well-placed, well-respected Republican legal people,
yes,
who were in favor of. They said this is what the Constitution says, and therefore we should go by that. And I was of that mind until I read an article where this lawyer was saying that that what should happen actually did happen. That the courts not only should not accept the idea of one state deciding to not let a candidate be on the ballot, but that the Supreme Court should be unanimous about it. And his argument was that you don't want just one state to determine who's going to be president of the United States. If it's a state issue, then that's one thing. But when you have one state that could literally impact the entire country, then that's not a good idea. And that's basically what happened today.
Well, on the flip side of that,
right,
most of our national politics and most of our national policies come out of states.
Right.
So they start at the state level, and then
Right.
somebody advocates for them on a federal level.
Right.
So states do impact what happens nationally, and on the other side, that elections are run by states. Even though they're federal elections, it's run by the state.
Right.
And what's happening down in Georgia? So if that argument was consistent, then the case in Georgia is really in trouble, just on the on based on that argument, right?
No. This is the difference. Is
I
that
know.
okay? Go ahead.
Yeah. So to say that one state is making a determination for the nation, it's really not. Colorado made a decision for Colorado,
right? But
it did not.
But the election is going to be so close that if Trump can't be, it couldn't have been on the ballot there, then that could have made that could have in and of itself put Biden back in office.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm personally very much for getting rid of Trump almost any way possible. except
Yeah.
assassination, because I don't want him to be a martyr. But other than that, good witness to bad rubbish. That's how I see it with him. However, when I read this article, because what you have to do is look at it from the flip side. What if Alabama decided that they didn't want a candidate? I mean, if we had that ruling, then Alabama, and we had President Obama or candidate Obama trying to run, then what and Obama had been in a peace march somewhere, they could trump it up and say he was trying to upset the country, and therefore,
then I wonder how those cases in New Mexico are going to be looked at, because there were two people who were that were prohibited from taking office through the Insurrection Act.
Yeah, right. But that impacted that state. It didn't impact the 49 others. And that's the theory behind it. And
no, I get it. I get it. Listen, I want for Trump to be I want for him to be beaten at the ballot box.
Yeah.
And as a lawyer, I don't disagree that the Supreme Court needed to weigh in on this.
Right.
I believe that the Supreme Court needed to weigh in on it, but I think that the is it 4 women? Is there 4 women on the court?
Yeah.
The 4 women on the court, the 1 conservative and the 3 liberals, all sided together on their concurring opinion that the ruling may have gone a little too far.
Yeah, well, that's because they put it in the hands of the Congress.
Yeah, and
that's the problem. I mean, because we see what a bang up job the Congress is doing right now.
Exactly. Exactly. So basically, what the Supreme Court did, and this conservative Supreme Court did, was to almost insulate the president from, unless Congress acts to remove a president. But that could also backfire, because depending on the makeup of the Congress, depends on who they decide to prohibit from taking office.
Okay, this is the reality, Mark. We shouldn't be. Way too much faith is being put into these court cases and the 91 counts that the greatest grifter in American history has right now.
Right.
What we need to do is beat him the old-fashioned way.
Right.
Of getting the votes out there, getting the people registered, and getting them to the polls. And he needs to lose magnificently. We don't need a close election. We need something that's so strong and powerful that finally the Republicans will get a wake-up call and realize that this is no way to run a government.
Now this may be my hopeless optimism, because I'm a hopeless optimism. This could be Republicans who want to be rid of Trump, supporting Trump in the primary so that he could be smashed in the general.
Yeah.
This could be.
That's not optimistic. That's cynical.
So this could be people, because look, 30 or 40% of the people who are voting for Nikki Haley,
Yeah,
a great majority of them say that they will not vote for Trump.
yeah. No,
So
that's why I'm not worried about, for all the liberal Democrats who are doing all the hand wringing, worried about Biden losing to Trump. That's not going to happen.
well, first of all,
But he can sneak by. That's what I'm calling for is such a massive outpouring
mhm.
that it becomes plain and clear that we're not going to tolerate this type of behavior, and that we need to get rid of MAGA also. And we need to kill the MAGA movement, and it's only going to have to be a real good shellacking, as Obama would say, for that
Yes,
to happen.
right.
And even then, I mean, some of these MAGA people, they're still fighting the Civil War. And if they had their way, you and I would be back on a plantation, working for free.
Yeah, well, they're trying to turn that clock back.
Yeah.
They're trying to turn that clock back, and we see what's happening with them. They're trying to moralize, on everybody else. They want
Well,
to
it's
be
right.
in
What we have going on right now, and we have to call a blizzard a snowstorm, is that it's a white Christian movement going on. That's what's happening, is that they are trying to force the country into white Christian values with white Christian people running them, and anybody that's not white should return to the back of the line or go home.
Yeah. So I'm still asking for somebody to define to me what is white Christian values, because none of them line up with the Bible. None of them line up
No,
with
they line
Christ.
up with white privilege.
Okay.
They line up,
So
but yeah,
so they can't then the word Christian or Christianity can't be associated with that. It has to be called something else because
no, they can
not.
call it. This is the beauty of it from their perspective,
Mhm,
is that they can call it white Christian, although it's not very Christian at all. But they can
right.
call it that, and then they can do. It's like, what would Jesus do? He would do what we say he would do.
Right. Yeah, we tell him what to do.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where they're trying to go with this. And
Yeah.
it's not the first time this has happened. There have been other movements in the 30s where you had some white nationalists and dictators. I mean, people who were in support of Germany. They say, "Hey, Hitler got a good idea here."
Yeah. Fascism was not something that was it came very close to happening here a few
Right.
times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they're gonna try it again. All this all this stuff goes in waves, up and down, and we're a very low tide right now.
Yeah. So somebody comes along and is their kind of their poster boy, and Donald Trump happens to be theirs. I said that uh, ex- Donald Trump getting in his position exposed that we have not made the kind of racial gains that we thought we had made in this country.
Now
Uh,
we made them, and they go, "Oh, wait a minute, this is not a good idea. We have to turn this sucker around."
okay,
We
I
want
give you that one.
1950s America,
Yeah, I give you that one. Yeah,
when
yeah,
niggers knew their place,
yes,
and all these brown people from Asia and India and what have you couldn't get in the country. because up until 65, we had a very discriminatory immigrant program going on.
Yeah, what is that? Operation Wetback?
Right, 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 right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
where
mean,
they
we have
just
discriminated against, and what is going on here is a backlash from the white folks of a certain mentality uh, that it's getting to be too brown and it's and black, and white people can't just automatically go to the front of the line now. They got to wait their turn
or
because
are they afraid that the black and brown people are going to do to them what they did to us?
oh yes, yeah, no, of course that's a fear.
Yeah.
When Harold Washington was elected in Chicago, that was a fear. They thought, well, we've been screwing these people for decades, and now they're going to get it and they're going to screw us. So we got to stop that.
Yeah, and Harold Washington had to go to the communities to say, "Hey, I'm trying to help you, but you got some people down there that don't want me to help you."
Right, right. Yes, exactly. No, that's very smart. He
Yeah.
he go into one of those white neighborhoods and stand by a big puddle of water where the sewer needed to be fixed because it was drowning out. And he said, "Well, we got a plan for this, but your alderman won't vote for it because he doesn't like me."
Well, let me ask you this thing, that which I don't think that it is going to. I don't think it's going to matter, but on this whole ageism thing,
Yeah,
um, this is where I contend that Biden has, as you said earlier, has become a great president.
right.
Biden was not a person that I supported.
Yeah,
I mean, I voted for him. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
right.
I didn't vote for the other the other guy, but he was not what I would back then think what was a good choice.
Yeah,
I thought that when he announced that we were going to be stuck with a Republican,
yeah. I know Obama thought that too. That's
yeah,
why Obama was late to coming to support him. And
yeah,
the election before then, he went with Hillary because he didn't think Biden could win it.
neither did I.
Yeah,
But the fact that he did win, and we needed him to win, just so we could have some type of, civility. Um, the man has done an astonishing accomplishment,
right.
an astonishing accomplishment of
Exactly.
getting, um, first of all, managing and governing um, the foreign affairs, governing and getting policies passed that are going to help Black communities.
And we got
As
a black woman as the vice president.
Black
We
woman is a vice president, Black woman that's over the Secretary of Housing.
Right. If you
Right.
housing, that was one of our jobs,
Yeah.
under the Bushes. That's
Yes.
okay because they didn't care about that.
Right.
But when you look at the head of the military is black, they
Yes.
care about the military. And
Yes.
when you see black folks in these jobs that are traditionally powerful and traditionally desirable, and you now have a black person in charge of it, then that's a good sign.
And we need to understand that it makes a difference.
Right,
It makes a difference that you have somebody in place with some sense who looks
right,
like you,
right,
not the Clarence Thomases or the Ben Carsons, who are just symbols.
right.
Um, but a tools,
get along, guys.
right. But the accomplishments that he has got, like I know that people are not really paying attention now,
Right.
but what I am doing is gathering the list because I believe that the Democratic National Committee needs to spend millions of dollars making sure that in every tentacle, whether it be little small podcasts like this one, major outlets, that people go down the litany of what this president has accomplished for the country and for our communities and how they are going to be $6.5 billion, not to minority, but to HBCUs in 3 years. $6.5 billion
Right.
that this administration has distributed to HBCUs.
Right.
Now, people try to tout that Donald Trump paid or sent $250 million to HBCUs, which was not accurate in the first place.
Yeah.
Because what he did is he completely took it out of the budget. But Almer Adams out of South Carolina put it back and got it passed by the Democrats when Trump was in office. And I forget the HBCU, the former HBCU president. I can't think of his name right now, who actually went into Trump's office to explain to him
they had a whole bunch. Remember, it was a group of Black educators, presidents, and what have you.
Yes.
And they thought that he's going to take care of them, and he used them as a
prop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Sort of like he did Steve Harvey and Kanye West.
Right.
But there was this one, and I can't think of his name right now. It escapes me. That he went in and schooled the Trump administration, and they were able to put that money back into the budget, but it had nothing to do with him wanting to do it.
Right.
With him wanting to do it.
Trump is a racist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
He's a rapist. I've got a clip to show the history of his racist attacks going back
to the 70s when they would discriminate against Black people. They wouldn't rent their apartments to Black folks in New York,
and were sued for it.
Yeah,
were sued for it, right?
Right.
And so, which is why his brother or Trump's niece, who's a daughter of his, Mary, who's a daughter of his brother.
Right.
His brother refused to follow in his father's footsteps.
Right.
And Donald wanted to be, loved by his father, and is modeling everything that his father was.
Right.
Today. And so, but that's who he is, right? That's who he is. The guy I don't think he likes anybody. I don't even think he likes his own children. I think that
he likes himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As long as whatever somebody is doing benefits,
and that's questionable. I think he has an insecurity problem, whereas he knows he's faking it.
Right.
So when he looks at himself, he tries to act like he's a tough guy, and he's not a tough guy by any stretch of the imagination.
No, he's just insulated with a bunch of
Right.
Yeah, he's insulated. I mean, if the guy had to go toe to toe with somebody, he'd run in the closet.
Right.
But and he's going to be embarrassed. I still contend that
Yeah.
he is going to strike a deal when these cases start to constrict on his testicles. He is going to cut a deal because he is deathly afraid. And he
I don't think
certainly,
they're gonna let him cut a deal. I don't think he's gonna be able to cut. Who's gonna give him the deal?
well, he's going to, I think that he's going to try to cut, if he could cut a deal that would absolutely avoid him from serving any prison time on state or federal, because he's going to get convicted on one of those cases.
Right. No, and they're not gonna cut a deal with him. He's
For
he's
good.
he's gonna get the Blagojevich treatment.
Now that would be
That
justice.
would be where he got twice as much time as he would have gotten if he had just followed the rules. They told him, don't be going on TV lying.
Yeah.
Just lay low and tell people how sorry you are that you did what you did, and you get a light sentence. But
Right.
no, he's just like he was on Trump's show. He was on David Letterman. How do you
Yeah.
remember?
He did the circuit.
He was on Letterman's show, and he said he always wanted to be on this show in the worst way. And Letterman said, well, you just did.
Yeah. I mean, Letterman was, is a brilliant comedian. I always, I admired him for his intellect because I always thought that he was a very intelligent guy.
Yeah.
But he could come back with those zingers. And he would demolish Trump too, just with a smile on his face.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the one comedian who could get Trump to come on his show and he would completely annihilate him and Trump not even know what happened to him.
Right. Right.
Right. So, but I believe that he will try to cut a deal. I
mean, he will try to cut a deal for sure.
Yeah.
But now I don't personally, I don't think I would like to see him in prison.
Yes. Yeah, I would like to see him in one of the Trump Tower prisons.
Yeah, well, one of the maximum securities.
Yeah,
so
they can
worry about anybody assassinating him or anything, beating him up in prison.
Well, we have several of those that have been built. In fact, I think there's one here in the state of Illinois that's never been occupied.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they can use that one. There's a brand new facility.
Yeah, right. Well, if it were up to me, I'd like to see him at the Guantanamo as the only prisoner on the island.
Yeah,
but more than likely, what's going to happen is he's going to be under house arrest at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, well, that's not.
But he won't be entertaining
justice.
Huh?
That's not justice.
No, but it's. I mean, it is justice because that's how justice works. Is the richer and more powerful you get, and the less you have to worry about.
Yeah, well, I think he needs to. I think he needs to go and do some real time in a real prison.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, well, like I said, I'd like to see him and get. Actually, it would be really cool if he and Putin were there. They were only two prisoners.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can certainly trade secrets.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah, they certainly can
talk
trade
about
secrets.
the good old days when they could do this and they could do that and all kind of crooked stuff and enjoy it. And now they just have each other and they don't. And Trump likes Putin, but Putin doesn't like Trump. He just uses it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Oddly, they both are alike, but Putin is just smarter in terms of how he can pull and yank the chain of Donald Trump, just like he did Tucker Carlson when he went down there
Yeah.
made him look like a complete fool. But I wanted to get back to this this whole age thing with Biden, because
Okay.
I for one embrace an older person, because but the younger Biden would have been a disaster as a president.
Right. For sure.
Would have been a complete disaster.
Right.
But this Biden, who is wiser, look back at many of his mistakes. Also, I think that, and see how you think of it, I think the most pivotal time for Biden's transformation is serving as vice president under Barack Obama and seeing how his good old boys treated Barack Obama
Yeah.
as president of the United States. I think that was the most transformational time
Yeah.
of his time in government, that he saw that and said to himself, if ever I get the opportunity to serve as president, this will not happen to me. I am going to go for broke. I'm going to go for broke. And in terms of
Well,
being,
what he did, in fact, was he adopted a lot of Bernie's issues. And I'm trying to remember, were you a Bernie bro?
yes, well, yes, I was
Yeah,
a
you were.
Bernie,
I
I
know
was a Bernie bro.
Ben Jarosky was, but yeah, you too. And my argument against Bernie, I love Bernie's ideas, but Bernie never could have gotten elected.
No,
If Bernie had been the front runner for the Democrats, the Republicans, every ad against it would have a hammer and a sickle in it to indicate that he was a communist. And now, of course, we got the irony of that is we have Trump, and the Republicans are there. I mean, they're backing Putin. They're mouthing Putin's for talking points now.
well, I think that um, I don't think that Nikki Haley could beat Biden. I don't think anybody could beat him,
No.
because I think when it comes down to it, when the record is revealed of what this person has done, as what he has accomplished,
Right.
when the record is revealed, because you
Well,
have
it
to look
has
at
to
the
be
facts.
okay. This is the problem with the Democrats. The mistake they've been making is they've been using all these highfalutin, intelligent points. The stock market is this much percentage bigger, and what have you. They've
Yeah,
got to find out a way to break it down to the average Democrat.
right.
And that's the other thing. Quit chasing MAGA people and white people that they hope will be voting for him. And
I think
just
the best prosecutor is Gavin Newsom. I think he's one of the best prosecutor of Biden's record.
yeah,
He certainly should be somebody that they have out on the stump, because when you hear him go down his record,
he's going to be out on the stump because he's running for 28.
yeah,
Kamala gonna have another Republican on her hands if she thinks she's going to be the first woman president.
yeah. I heard something the other day where there was a poll taken. There was a poll taken, and I'm not, a big person on polls, but there was a poll taken on who they would vote for president if there was a woman versus a man. And in that poll, it said that women overwhelmingly said that they would rather see a man as president than a woman.
Right.
53% of white women voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
In 2016.
Right.
So I think, and I some people have said that to me back then, and I wasn't ready to accept that back then, but I am beginning to lean toward that. That well may be that America is not ready to accept a woman as president of the United States.
Well, by 28, who knows? That's a long ways off.
Yeah,
You know,
we'll see.
Nobody thought that Obama could be president in the beginning.
Well, nobody thought that, right? Nobody
Right,
thought that,
right. And he changed the tune.
yeah, including me.
Nobody. I can remember when Harold was running, and they had this black radio show, and somebody called in and said one of the listeners, black listeners, and said Chicago's not ready for a black mayor.
Yeah,
And Derek Hill, who's it was his show, and he said to him, he said, "Well, when are we going to be ready for it? if we're not ready for it now, you got a time where we're going to be ready for this."
yeah.
So you just have to fight the fight. That's
I listen. I agree with that. I agree with that. But we'll see. I hope that that changes. Whether it would be Kamala, I don't know. I mean, because she's done some great things as vice president. She's done some great. This whole student loan forgiveness, that's really her. The way that they crafted that policy, impacts disproportionately a lot of black college students or former students.
Well, and because we got the Supreme Court taking away all sorts of opportunities every chance they get, for black students, and so we need some other avenues right now.
Yeah, but I think that people need to, know how integral and important that Kamala Harris has been to this administration and things that she has been able to get done with the student loans forgiveness, with the HBCU money to $6.5 billion in 3 years. I mean, $6.5 billion. That's not talked about a lot. So we definitely need to be talking about these things because not that I'm worried that the Republicans are going to get a whole lot of black men to vote for Republicans, because history has shown that they've never gotten more than 9 or 10% ever in the history. They just use these talking points. They use that Lee Atwater talking point that he brought back in 1992 or something like that, that they repeated every election cycle, right? Every election cycle, they repeat that 20% of black men are going to support the Republicans. And it's just never happened. It's just never happened. So not that I'm concerned about that, but I certainly think that, they need to make sure that it is just reverberated of the accomplishments that have come out of this administration, to rally people to get to the polls, to make sure that Joe Biden is reelected again. I don't have a problem with somebody being 80 years old or 82 years old as president, because that tells me there's wisdom that's in place, that they have certainly had time to look back over all the mistakes that they made. Now, if this was Joe Biden 30 years ago, I would be right there with you. I would be right there with you. But to see what he has done, I just believe that all those years of all those mistakes, and certainly his 8 years behind Barack Obama, has made him become the president that he is today.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts.
Yeah. No, he's a great president. He's accomplished more than any president since, depending on how you want to look at it, either LBJ or FDR.
Well, I would say FDR, because what was LBJ's great accomplishment?
It's a great society. It's a great society. I mean, he got the civil rights bills through.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, where he did great, where he screwed up was with Vietnam.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where he screwed up big time.
That
Otherwise,
he didn't want to tell the truth about it.
right. He didn't want to be the first president to lose a war.
Yeah. Yeah. That was that was a big blunder.
Right.
That was a big blunder on his part.
He
But
paid-
I would think that I would have to put Joe Biden's record next to FDR
Yeah.
when I look at it in totality.
Right.
Sure, LBJ's administration signed into law some historic
Right.
policies, but I think that I would have to say that Joe Biden was closer to FDR in transforming the economic conditions of people at the bottom.
Yeah.
I think that, which is one of the reasons that Black people have to look at, this in the long term. We can't be looking at, being short-sighted, right? We have to
Right.
play the long game, because policies take time
Right.
to take root.
Right.
And you need to make sure that you keep the administrations in place so that those policies can take root, so that we don't have, the type of Roe versus Wade kind of situation that we have, which, they will try and do anyway.
Did you see how much the UPS drivers got in their union labor movement?
No, what was their settlement?
$170,000 a year.
$170,000.
Exactly. Right. And I don't know about yours, but most of my UPS drivers are Black. The ones I see.
Yeah, I haven't seen a white UPS driver in my neighborhood in a long. Listen, hey, the country will only do better when people do better.
Right.
Businesses will only do better when people do better.
Right.
This idea, see, Republicans don't even like to use the term invest. They like to use the term spend, because, it's the only thing because they don't have any other record to run on, right? They have no accomplishments to run on that improve the lives of people, right? So they have to put a bunch of fear and scare. Ooh, the Democrats are spending money. Well, if one bill so far has generated 14 million jobs at the tune of the average salary of $98,000, I think that's somewhere around $72 billion or something like that. And that's going to equate to hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue for government.
Yes.
So we get a return on those dollars. It's not spent, it's invested, because the money is coming back. And so I think that's the way that it needs to be explained to people, that no, this is not spending, this is investing. When you put money out, you expect it to get a return. If we're spending $1.9 trillion and we're creating millions and millions of jobs that people are earning, they're going to be spending billions and billions of dollars buying goods and services, which are going to create more jobs.
Right.
That will expand the tax base.
Right.
That will bring revenues in. So we just have to make sure that when the money gets to the states, like, we're going to be getting, I think, somewhere around $56 billion over the next 20 years or something like that, coming out of just 3 bills. We got to make sure that our communities don't get passed over
Right.
with those dollars, right? The
Right.
president can only get the bills passed and get the money to the states, but it's up to the local governments to make sure that.
Well, in Illinois, we are well positioned right now to take advantage of that.
Right.
We got a deputy governor who is black um, and smart about those sort of things. We have people in all kinds of key positions now.
Well, and we have to make sure that we hold those people to account.
Oh, of course, but it's easier. It's easier to hold them accountable than a MAGA person in that same position for us, and that's how you have to think about it.
Let's see here. Let's see. Bernard Phillips says that Biden and all presidents of this country, number one agenda is to push white supremacy first. Second and third, both parties' agenda is racist. When
That's not true.
well, it's not true at all. That simply
right.
is a
That's
person who just does not
you
want
know,
to be informed.
The thing is, when we were going through the COVID crisis and the George Floyd crisis, and they were doing these national stories, the thing that blew my mind is you would see these black mayors in cities that you didn't even know had black mayors.
Right.
And didn't have black majorities. You see these black police chiefs. You see all these black people in positions of authority and power.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's on the Democrat side. It's not Republicans.
No.
So to say that both parties that's a false equivalency.
Absolutely false, because when you look at the Republicans, what is it? 3% of Republicans are black or something like that. And I think there's 300 black mayors in the country, something like that, right?
Yeah, so it's a huge number.
It's a huge number. And
City
all of these billions of dollars that have been passed, they have been passed by Democrats.
Right.
Passed by Democrats, signed into law by a Democratic president. Those monies will be going to the states.
Right.
The black mayors will be putting in proposals for those monies to get them to their cities to help with expanding broadband, helping with expanding health care.
And making black millionaires.
And making black million. I think we have more black businesses under this administration.
Right.
I think at 3 times the rate under this administration.
Right. Because when you have a black person in an office like that, then you don't go hat in hand saying, well, can I have a percentage of this? You can become the major contractor on it, and can at the major contractor can give some of the crumbs to some white people, some white women, instead of vice versa.
Exactly. And we could turn our public schools around and to have them to function like they're supposed to, without this idea of privatizing them with school choice, because all school choice is some white people who just wants to take control of the money and turn it into a profit center, caring nothing about educating the people of our communities. That's what school choice is about. Right. Even in Ohio, where they demonstrated to show with school choice, I think they signed contracts on the back of a napkin, and having some people who had no educational experience that are on the boards of school choice, right? They have these corporations
Right.
that we are subsidizing private schools with public money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I mean that, and I would not, the guy that you read, I
Yeah.
um I, I wouldn't say that he's 100% wrong. There's still room for improvement,
Absolutely.
but to
Absolutely.
say that everybody's racist, and he may be 25 years old or
Or
something.
that both parties are
Yeah,
alike. They are not.
exactly right. Because
They are not.
I know back when um, we didn't have any power, and we had to be begging. I know back when Richard Gordon Hatcher became the mayor of Gary, and the white business all moved to Maryville. They were so upset about a black man being in charge of a black city.
Right.
Uh, there's there's a lot of dues that have been paid already.
Right. Yeah.
But,
And I
we
say
got
this all the time.
progress out of it.
Yeah. I say, look, we can't have this purity test, right?
Right,
Nobody can pass a purity test. None of us
right,
can, right?
right,
And neither can the Democratic Party.
right.
But the Republican Party and the Republicans' agenda is not an alternative for black people.
No,
So
it's
what
an
I ask for
impurity.
people, yeah,
How
right,
impure can you be? Yeah.
yeah. So what I
Towards
ask
black
of
folks.
people, I ask for people, give me one, not two, one policy that Republicans have championed that has helped the average working person or black people. Just one in the last
If you go
30
back
years.
far enough, if you go back 50 years, Richard Nixon introduced affirmative action before he started doing the Southern strategy.
Was that introduced by a Democrat under his administration? I don't think it was Richard Nixon himself.
No, I think he was talking about it. Yeah, I mean, he was. I mean, with politics, now you can't. I mean, seldom is it just one person in the sense
Yeah.
of anything. Um, if you recall that Obama was not for um, gay marriage, and Biden stepped out there and said some stuff that he shouldn't have been saying, and so Obama had to evolve quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. When Biden made that comment, what was it on one of the late night
Yeah,
uh
somewhere
yeah.
he got out of line.
Yes.
He said the wrong thing. That's what amazing is that they're attributing that when Obama, Biden misspeaks, they attribute it to his age. Uh, Biden been misspeaking for 50 years, saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the idea that, again, we're not going to have a purity test, but the bottom line is you got to look at the record. Which is the party that we have gotten the most from?
Right.
Which is the party that we've made any progress with?
Yeah,
And I
back
contend, let's organize ourselves to be stronger, that we
right.
make the party work even better for
Exactly.
our communities. That's what
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, back when Trump was president, and I was on Facebook fighting with right wingers all the time, and there were a few black people here and there who were supporting Trump,
Mhm.
and talking about how we were on the blacks were on the Democratic plantation. And I would point out to them that the only black cabinet member Trump had was Uncle Ben. And that was it.
Right.
One.
The most undiverse administration
Right. He's like one.
in the history of the
One
office.
black on the whole cabinet.
Right.
And now
Right.
you look at Biden's cabinet. Altogether different.
Altogether different. And then look at the policy. Just look at the policies that were passed. Listen, I contend that I would have never have dreamed that Joe Biden would have who was more of a, some would say, a center right guy. All right.
Yeah.
But all things being equal, this guy is as liberal as anybody in terms of the policies that has gotten passed.
Well, he's taking Bernie's policies. That's what he's done.
Exactly.
He's taken Bernie's policy and managed to get them through. Bernie never would have been able to do that.
Well, I think that Bernie pushed the needle, right? I think he pushed the needle in terms of the campaign.
Oh yeah, no, Bernie did good stuff, but
yeah, and he needed that, and so he had to respond to that. So I think again, there are a number of people, but I think that we need to really understand that we have to play the long game. It's the long game in this process, and we need to make sure that we reelect this administration,
right,
and that we organize ourselves so that we are stronger to make sure that the policies that are coming out of this administration, which means the money that's coming out of this administration that's coming to the states, that it doesn't pass us by.
Right. Exactly.
That's where we need to be,
right.
And to making sure that happens, because look, they just they're building a $2 billion plant down in Kankakee that's going to create 3,000 jobs at an average of $98,000 a year. They just announced the reactivation of the plant in Belvedere, which is going to be another 2,000 jobs. We need to have that type of investment on the southeast side of Chicago and on the west side of Chicago, where we got 600 acres that are shovel ready to go, where the old U.S. Steel site was. So instead of us, being focused on things that are not true, we need to get focused on the money that's already coming that will pass us by if we're not organized to make sure that the governor, the lieutenant governor, and our representatives keep their eye on the needle, right? Keep their eye on the ball to make sure that we don't get passed by.
Right.
Because it will happen if we allow ourselves to get distracted, because it's not going to happen coming from Republicans.
Right. And we got to vote.
We got to vote.
That's what politicians pay attention to. Is if they know you're going to come out and vote for sure, then they're not going to take you for granted.
They'll respond. I contend that when you can control the vote, then you can control the politicians, and you can control what they do.
Right.
Because they count well.
Right.
It's the only thing that they do, is that they count well. And when they know that they're under fire, you can get them to respond. I wish we had time, but we're at the end. Monroe, we're going to have you to come back, and because there's some things that are going on. I wanted to get to it tonight. We didn't get a chance to get to it. Mary Flowers is being challenged, but she's being challenged by Willie Preston, Chris Welch, and Derek Curtis, who is the alderman of the 18th Ward. And they put up another challenge to her to try to unseat her because she won't be quiet. We got to talk about that. So I'm going to have you
Yeah,
to come
no,
back.
when I was press secretary, Mary was new, and
Yeah.
and I thought that she would be good, and she has been good. And
Yeah.
so, now she's the longest running.
Yeah. Almost 40 years.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, Monroe Anderson, thank you for being here. I'll have to call this my Monday, my Monroe Monday show.
All
Monroe
right.
Anderson. All right. Look forward to seeing you again. All right, folks. We'll see
Okay,
you.
I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
You take
All
care.
right, folks. That's going to do it for this edition of the People Show on Monday night. We'll look forward to seeing you right back here at the same time, same place next Monday night for another edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. And hopefully we'll have Monroe Anderson back with us. Take care, folks.